Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is The Raptor, and welcome back to another of my Death Battle discussion videos. If you've watched this channel before, then you'll know that I've done some videos talking about the death battles that I want to see happen on the show, but as we're killing time waiting for Season 8 to start, I figured that I might as well try something a little more negative. Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 fights that I personally do not want to see on Death Battle. Now, I don't have too many strong thoughts against most Death Battle ideas. There aren't a lot where I'm thinking like, oh my god, that's such a terrible idea, but I figured that I may as well share the opinions that I do have on the fight ideas that kind of rub me the wrong way. And of course, we all have our own opinions. I don't expect too many people to strongly agree with me on my picks, but let's all try to be respectful anyway. I think we can do that. If you want to see any fights that I have on this list, that's great. That's perfectly fine. Just remember that I'm not going to be an asshole about your least wanted fights, so please try not to be an asshole about mine, okay? Again, it's all opinions. It's all in good fun. So with that out of the way, let's get on with it. So the first fight that's on my least wanted list is Cinder from Killer Instinct versus Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. This really isn't a jab against this fight idea specifically, it's more so a jab at the trend that I see Death Battle doing a lot, where they pit two video game characters together where their only real similarities are that they're from video games, and they share a general power or trait or something of the sort, but nothing really deeper than that. They've done this kind of thing many times before, like with Sub-Zero versus Glacius, and Ken versus Terry, where they have similarities but nothing really too deep. And sometimes the execution can still be good, like with Goro versus Machamp, and Saberwolf versus John Talbane, where the characters don't have that much in common, but the execution, the actual fight episode, was still really good. But in general, I prefer to have good and well thought out ideas to start with, rather than having to rely on the episode to make the idea good, you know what I mean? Cammy versus Sonya and Balrog versus TJ Combo, in my opinion, are good examples of video game fights where they have face value connections, but also something a little bit deeper than that, and that's honestly good enough for me. I decided to use Cinder versus Scorpion as the rep for this because I think it's one of the more popular fights that follow this trend that they haven't done yet. I wouldn't want to see it personally, and I don't want to see this trend keep up. I'm really just sick of Death Battle blindly putting together video game characters that are both fire or both ice or both dinosaurs or whatever. Even if the ideas would be popular to the average viewer, I still don't really like them. And obviously this can apply to more than just video games, but I feel like they do it the most with video games, especially when it comes to stuff like Killer Instinct and Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and games like those, you know, fighting games. I just in general expect more from matchup ideas than bare bones similarities, so I hope you guys can see where I'm coming from with this. Next up on the list is Vision from Marvel versus Martian Manhunter from DC. This is probably going to be one of the more controversial picks on my list because I know some people really want to see this one, but this might just be my least wanted death battle for simple reasons. I don't understand the idea, and they both have better opponents. Vision and Martian Manhunter can phase through objects, and they're dressed vaguely similarly. Those are all the connections that they have, and I do not understand how this became so popular. They're also both super strong and fast and tough, yada yada yada, but that barely counts as a similarity when Martian Manhunter's stats are just so much higher than Vision's. There are barely any connections between them, and it's a stomp of a fight, which is a terrible combination. I just do not like this idea at all. I will admit though that Martian Manhunter doesn't have too many amazing opponents in terms of both similarities and closeness of a fight. Personally, I'd like to see him fight Silver Surfer, but that's just me. I just think that's the best of both worlds. And also, Vision versus Red Tornado might be my most wanted death battle besides Galactus versus Unicron, so I might be a bit biased for not liking Vision versus Martian Manhunter, but I'm telling you guys, Red Tornado works so much better as Vision's opponent in basically every regard. The popularity of Vision versus Martian Manhunter just really annoys me, and I know that if we get it, we'd be missing out on other great opportunities. If you like this one, that's great. I just really don't want it. Coming up next on the list is number 5 from the Umbrella Academy versus Nightcrawler from Marvel. It seems that a lot of people really wanted to see an Umbrella Academy character come to Death Battle after the show became so popular, and this seems to be the most popular idea that involves one of those characters. And even though I really like both of these characters, I really don't like this fight idea. The characters barely have any connections. People really just paired them up because both of them can teleport, and the people really just wanted to see an Umbrella Academy character in Death Battle, so they chose such a weak link to make something passable. And they do have other similarities, like they are both great fighters, and they develop their powers through a school of some sort, even though I think that's a bit of a stretch. But the methods behind how they became such great fighters are so different that I can barely call that a similarity. Their backstories are just so incredibly different. And in the original Umbrella Academy comics, number 5 can't even teleport. He more so just like distorts space and time to make it look like he's speeding up really fast. So instead of 3 connections, you have more like 1.5 connections, and like I said before, they're not really that good in my opinion. And to the people who've watched this channel consistently, yes, I love Nightcrawler, I love him to death, he is one of my favorite Marvel characters, if if not my absolute favorite, but like some other characters in fiction, he just doesn't work in Death Battle. And some people might be thinking, wait, what do you mean by that? Why doesn't he work in Death Battle? Well, ever since coming back from the dead, because he was dead in the comics for a little bit of time, he is not able to be sent back in any natural fashion. He can't die by any natural means, or at least not by any means that 5 would have. And his soul is actually removed from his body since he had to give it up in order to come back to the living world. It is literally harder to kill him than it is to kill Lobo, which really shouldn't be a thing, and yet it is. So again, the whole fight just doesn't work on multiple levels. There are good matchups with Umbrella Academy characters that exist, trust me, there are, but just please don't use this one. If you want a better one, go with Dark Willow from Buffy versus the White Violin, or Vanya from the Umbrella Academy. That one works a lot better. They actually have really good connections. Just please do not use this one, it just does not work. Next on the list is Goku from Dragon Ball versus Saitama from One Punch Man, which is undoubtedly the most controversial entry on this list. I understand that a lot of people would be super hyped to see this fight, I really do understand it. But the way I see it, it's just a recipe for disaster. People who think that Goku wins think that the other side is crazy and vice versa. People who are backing either character have completely different reasoning for their stance. Most people who side with Goku say that when looking at their feats and abilities, Goku just has more going for him. And most people that side with Saitama say that Saitama is supposed to win all of his big fights because that's the point of his character, so he should just automatically win. Of course, I can't speak for everybody, but it seems like those are the two major stances here. Now, personally, as a somewhat serious versus debater, I believe that a fight should be analyzed through what the fighters have shown and done through their feats and abilities, and that most plot-related stuff like plot armor and similar things shouldn't really be considered. And by doing that, I do personally believe that Goku would most likely win. But removing that key trait from Saitama is going to make people upset because he's almost an exception to that rule by design. Not factoring that into a fight might make sense to a lot of serious versus debaters, myself included, but a lot of other people would call it misrepresentation right off the bat. The fact is, Saitama's whole point is that he wins without trying, or he wins without needing to get stronger. So by definition, he doesn't work with something like Death Battle. He doesn't work with versus debating because he was literally designed to be incompatible with it. And yet for that reason, he became one of the most popular combatants in modern versus debating, and it just doesn't work a lot of the time from my experience. I would just prefer if Death Battle didn't even touch on this fight because, like I said, it's a disaster waiting to happen no matter what they do. I could see it happening later down the line, and I'm sure it would be cool, I'm sure it would be well done, at least to the best of their ability, but I personally just don't think it works very well. And last but not least, the final fight that I don't want to see on Death Battle is any fight with a Marvel symbiote in it. Now, obviously I have some explaining to do in order to justify such a big claim like that, and just as a disclaimer, I love symbiotes as a concept and in general in Marvel. More than one of them are among my favorite Marvel villains and characters. And I know there are a lot of fight ideas out there with symbiotes, and if you want any of those fights, that's fine. But in my personal opinion, symbiotes were not built for a Death Battle-like show. If you've been on this channel before, then you've probably heard something like this already from me, so apologies, I'm gonna go through it again. Symbiotes are very simple in that they are extremely hard to kill. They do have weaknesses like sound and fire, which can harm or kill them with varying degrees of success, depending on which symbiote you're looking at, or which powers and resistances they developed, etc, etc. But unless you've got some other weird workaround, or you're just stupid powerful, you're not going to be able to kill a symbiote if you don't have one of those weaknesses. They can just reform from whatever you do to them, and they can just keep on fighting. Now, unfortunately, this kind of formula isn't very compatible with a fight to the death show like Death Battle, because it means it's the same reasoning pretty much every time. Opponents of symbiotes need to meet two criteria in order to win. They need to be able to keep up with the symbiote in physical stats, if not surpass them, and they need to be able to exploit one of the specific weaknesses. If they can meet both of those criteria, they will win 99% of the time. If they can only meet 1 or 0, the symbiote will win 99% of the time. And whether or not you agree with Death Battle's judgment on the previous symbiote fights, it's clear that that is the standard formula. And when it's a show where the rules are that you have to die in order to lose, that's honestly how it will go most of the time, and it becomes so predictable and just so boring after a while. A good example that illustrates how this doesn't really work well is the most recent symbiote episode, Venom vs. Krona. The biggest question wasn't who was going to win between Venom and Krona, it was what are they going to give Venom, because it was obvious whichever way they decided to go because it was up to those two criteria. If they gave Venom the most recent buffs that he got in the comics, then he was just going to be too strong for Krona no matter what. But if they didn't give that to Venom, then Krona would have been able to keep up with Venom physically, and they would have been able to exploit the weakness. weakness. It's as simple as that, so either way it was gonna be obvious. At this point, bringing back symbiotes or bringing in new ones is almost pointless because once you know the answers to the criteria questions, you basically know what the outcome and reasoning are unless it's an extremely rare circumstance. Like for example, I could see something like Null versus Barbados happening, since their abilities may make the whole principle thing moot or something along the lines of that. I could see that kind of being a workaround to the general rule, but as a whole, I don't think it's very smart or very exciting to bring in symbiotes because they're nothing that we haven't exactly seen before in terms of survivability. I love symbiotes in general, don't get me wrong, I love them in Marvel, but I do recognize that they're just not the best for versus debate shows like Death Battle. But anyway guys, that is the video. I really hope you enjoyed it, even if you do disagree with some of my picks. These are just my personal opinions, and of course I may not get what I want. Death Battle is their show and they can do whatever they want with it, but I want to hear what you guys have to say. What are your least wanted death battles? Do you have any? Let me know down in the comments below. I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say. If you enjoyed this video, please give this video a like, comment your comments down below, subscribe if you could too, that would be amazing. But no matter what you guys do, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, that's it for me. I will see all of you guys in the next video. Peace out.